They say every man has secrets. Thaddeus Mercer had a ghost. Her name was Briar, and she disappeared 8 years ago with nothing but a goodbye note and a broken promise. He'd moved on, or so he told himself. Built an empire. Found a suitable bride. Buried the past under marble floors and merger contracts. But the past doesn't stay buried. Not when it has your eyes. Not when it's 7 years old. Not when it walks into your wedding reception, holding proof you can't deny. And especially not when the woman you're about to marry has no idea that the child calling you daddy even exists. Thaddeus Mercer had exactly 4 minutes before he became a married man. For minutes before the merger with the Van Empire was sealed. For minutes before his carefully constructed life became permanent. What he didn't know was that someone else was counting down too. Marlowe had traveled 300 miles with a dying woman's letter, a faded photograph, and a promise to find the father she'd never met. The wedding coordinator was cueing the string quartet. Louise was whispering, "We shouldn't be here." And Cordelia Van was checking her lipstick one last time. No one knew that a single word from a child's mouth would detonate everything. The fog rolled across the Mendocino cliffs like a mourner's veil, thick and silver-white against the jagged California coastline. Inside Greystone Manor, where chandeliers dripped crystals and imported orchids perfumed every corridor, Thaddeus Mercer stood before a floor-length mirror, adjusting his platinum cufflinks for the second time. His hands were steady. They had to be. "You look like you're about to close a business deal, not marry the love of your life," Finn Garrison said from the leather armchair behind him, swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass. Thaddeus didn't turn around. "Maybe that's because I am." Finn laughed, but it was hollow. They'd been best friends for 23 years. Long enough for Finn to know when Thaddeus was lying. The Groom'S suite smelled of cedar and old money, the kind of scent that clings to generational wealth. Thaddeus had grown up without it, raised by a single mother in a 2-bedroom apartment in Oakland, watching her work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. Now he owned buildings that touched the clouds. Now he had more zeros in his bank account than he could count. And in 4 hours, he would marry Cordelia Van. The merger of the century, the papers called it. The Mercer Tech Empire joining hands with the Van Hospitality Dynasty. Together, they would be unstoppable. Together, they would be comfortable. Thaddeus caught his own reflection and paused. 38 years old. Sharp jaw, silver threading through his dark temples, eyes the color of storm clouds. Successful. Powerful. Empty. He blinked and looked away. "You ever think about her?" The question came from Finn like a bullet he didn't see coming. "Who?" Thaddeus asked, though his jaw had already tightened. "Don't insult my intelligence, Thad. You know exactly who." "Briar." The name echoed in the chambers of his chest, bouncing off walls he'd built specifically to contain it. He hadn't said her name out loud in 8 years. Hadn't allowed himself to. "She's gone," Thaddeus said flatly. "People leave. That's what they do." Finn set down his glass. "She didn't just leave. She vanished. There's a difference." "Not to me." The lie tasted like ash on his tongue. 300 miles south, a rusted Greyhound bus groaned to a stop at a gas station just outside San Francisco. In the 3rd row from the back, a 7-year-old girl pressed her forehead against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Her name was Marlowe, and she had her mother's wild curls and her father's storm-gray eyes. Though she didn't know about the second part yet. "Louise." Her voice was small, tired. "How much longer?" The woman beside her, mid-40s, soft around the edges but steel in her spine, tucked a faded blanket around Marlowe's shoulders. Louise had been Briar's best friend since college. Now she was all Marlowe had left. "A few more hours, sweetheart. Try to sleep." "I can't." Marlowe clutched something in her small hands, a photograph, worn soft at the edges from years of touching. In it, a young woman with wild hair laughed into the camera, her arms wrapped around a man whose smile hadn't yet learned to hide. Briar and Thaddeus. Before everything fell apart. "Do you think he'll recognize me?" Marlowe whispered. Louise's heart cracked down the middle. She'd made a promise to Briar, a deathbed promise, the kind you can't break even when every rational part of you screams to turn back. Find him. Tell him about Marlowe. She deserves to know her father. Those were Briar's last words. spoken through cracked lips in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and goodbye. "I think," Louise said carefully, "that when he sees you, he's going to see the best parts of your mother. And the best parts of himself." Marlowe considered this. "But what if he doesn't want me?" The question hung in the stale bus air, heavy as a stone. Louise had no answer. Because the truth was she didn't know. She'd never met Thaddeus Mercer. All she knew was what Briar had told her. That he was brilliant and broken. That he loved with his whole heart until fear taught him to stop. And that he never knew Briar was pregnant when she left. He never knew about Marlowe. And today, at his wedding to another woman, he was about to find out. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to have your entire world shift in a single moment, keep listening. Because Thaddeus Mercer is about to find out. But before we go deeper, I need to ask you something. Have you ever had someone from your past show up unexpectedly and change everything? Drop a comment and tell me about it. I read every single one. And while you're there, I'm about to give you 60 minutes of twists, tears, and a revelation that'll leave you speechless. I've spent hours crafting every word, every emotion, every heartbeat of this story, for free. All I ask in return? 3 tiny clicks. Subscribe. Like. Share. That's it. You get a full cinematic story that'll stay with you for days, and I get to know you actually care. Because here's the truth. 9 out of 10 of you will listen to the end, feel everything, maybe even cry, and then scroll away like it never happened. Don't be that person. Now back to our story. At Greystone Manor, the string quartet began their warm-up. Cordelia Van stood in the bridal suite, her reflection a vision of white lace and old-money elegance. At the San Francisco bus station, Marlowe tucked the photograph into her coat pocket and whispered a prayer to a mother who could no longer hear her. Neither knew that fate was weaving their paths toward the same destination. Neither knew that by sunset, everything would be different. And neither knew that a single word, "Daddy," was about to detonate a bomb that no one saw coming. The ceremony was set to begin at 4 o'clock. At 3:45, Greystone Manor hummed with the controlled chaos of perfection. Florists adjusted cascading white roses. Caterers polished champagne flutes until they gleamed. 200 guests settled into gold-rimmed chairs arranged in precise rows across the cliffside terrace, the Pacific Ocean crashing against the rocks below like nature's own orchestra. Thaddeus stood at the altar, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression carved from stone. The officiant, a silver-haired man with kind eyes, leaned toward him. "Nervous? I don't get nervous." It wasn't a boast. It was a survival mechanism. Thaddeus had learned long ago that emotions were liabilities. They made you weak. They made you vulnerable. They made you the kind of man who falls in love with a free-spirited artist and believes she'll stay forever. She didn't stay. He pushed the thought away, locking it in the basement of his mind where he kept everything that could hurt him. The string quartet shifted into the wedding march. Guests rose to their feet. And at the end of the flower-strewn aisle, Cordelia Van appeared on her father's arm. She was beautiful. Objectively, undeniably beautiful. Her gown was hand-stitched Italian lace, her veil a waterfall of silk, her smile practiced to perfection. Victor Van beamed beside her, a man who measured success in acquisitions and saw his daughter's marriage as his greatest deal yet. Thaddeus watched his bride approach, and he felt nothing. This is fine, he told himself. Passion fades. Compatibility lasts. This is the smart choice. Cordelia reached the altar. Victor placed her hand in Thaddeus's with a firm nod. A transfer of property, sealed with a handshake's worth of pressure. "Take care of her," Victor said. It sounded more like a threat than a blessing. Thaddeus nodded once, turning to face his bride. Cordelia's eyes sparkled with something he couldn't name. Triumph, maybe. Satisfaction. The look of a woman who had gotten exactly what she wanted. "You look handsome," she whispered. "You look beautiful," he replied. Both statements were true. Neither was enough. The officiant opened his leather-bound book and began to speak, his voice carrying across the terrace like a prayer. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. 300 feet away, a taxi pulled up to Greystone Manor's iron gates. Louise paid the driver with crumpled bills, the last of their money, and helped Marlowe out of the back seat. The little girl's legs were stiff from hours of traveling, her eyes wide as she took in the estate before her. "It's like a castle," Marlowe breathed. Louise's stomach churned with dread. She hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected the sheer magnitude of wealth that dripped from every stone, every manicured hedge, every security guard in a crisp black suit. What had she been thinking, bringing a child here? To crash a billionaire's wedding? To deliver news that could destroy everything? "You made a promise," she reminded herself. "You promised Briar." "Louise." Marlowe tugged at her sleeve. "Why are there so many fancy cars?" Louise knelt down, meeting the child's eyes. Storm gray, just like the photograph. Just like she assumed the man inside. "Marlowe, listen to me. What we're about to do, it's not going to be easy. There are going to be a lot of people in there, and they might not be happy to see us. But we have to find him, right?" Marlowe's voice was steady, brave. "Mama said he needed to know about me. She said he'd want to." God, I hope she was right. Louise took Marlowe's hand. "Stay close to me. No matter what happens." They approached the gate. A security guard, young, stern-faced, held up his hand. "Invitation." "We don't have one," Louise admitted. "But we need to speak to Thaddeus Mercer. It's urgent. It's family business." The guard's expression didn't flicker. "No invitation, no entry. This is a private event. Please." Louise's voice cracked. "You don't understand. This little girl, she's his." "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Marlowe stepped forward, her small chin lifted with a courage that belied her years. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the photograph, the one she'd carried across 300 miles, the one her mother had pressed into her hands in that cold hospital room. "This is my daddy," she said, holding it up. "And that's my mama. She's in heaven now, and she told me I had to find him. She said he didn't know about me. She said he'd want to." The guard's stern expression wavered. He looked at the photograph, at the young man's face, unmistakably Thaddeus Mercer, laughing in a way no one had seen him laugh in years. Then he looked at Marlowe's eyes. The same eyes. He hesitated. "Wait here." He stepped away, speaking urgently into his radio. Louise pulled Marlowe close, her heart hammering against her ribs. "This is really happening. There's no going back now." Minutes passed. The ocean roared in the distance. And then the gate began to open. A woman in a headset, frazzled, clipboard in hand, rushed toward them. "Are you the ones claiming to have urgent family business with Mr. Mercer?" "Yes," Louise said. The ceremony has already started. If this is some kind of scam or publicity stunt, I swear to you, our legal team will." "It's not a scam." Louise's voice hardened. "This child is Thaddeus Mercer's daughter. Her mother just died, and she has every right to meet her father." The coordinator stared at Marlowe, at her storm-gray eyes, at the photograph clutched in her trembling hands. And in that moment, something in her expression shifted. Fear. "Follow me," she said quietly. "But God help us all." Back at the altar, the officiant had reached the vows. "Thaddeus Mercer, do you take Cordelia Van to be your lawfully wedded wife? To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part." Thaddeus opened his mouth to answer. And that's when he heard it. A commotion at the back of the terrace. Whispers rippling through the guests like wind through wheat. The coordinator's voice, high-pitched and panicked. Another voice, a woman's unfamiliar, saying, "Please, just let her see him." And then cutting through it all, a single word. Small. Trembling. Unmistakable. "Daddy." The word echoed across the terrace, silencing the whispers, freezing the moment in amber. Thaddeus turned. And there, standing at the end of the aisle where his bride had walked moments before, was a little girl with wild curls and storm-gray eyes. His eyes. She was holding a photograph. And even from 50 feet away, Thaddeus recognized the woman in it. Briar. The world tilted. The ocean roared. And Thaddeus Mercer felt something crack open inside him. Something he'd spent 8 years trying to bury. "Thaddeus." Cordelia's voice came from somewhere far away. "Thaddeus, who is that child?" He couldn't answer. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Because in that moment, everything he'd built, every lie he'd told himself, every future he'd carefully constructed, crumbled to dust. Silence has a sound. Thaddeus had never believed that until this moment. But standing at the altar, 200 pairs of eyes burning into him. He could hear it, the silence. It roared louder than the ocean below, louder than his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. The little girl hadn't moved. She stood frozen at the end of the aisle, her small body trembling, her eyes locked on his. Storm gray eyes. His mother's eyes. His eyes. Thaddeus. Cordelia's voice sliced through the silence, sharp as shattered glass. I asked you a question. Who is that child? He opened his mouth, but no words came. What could he possibly say? That he didn't know? That was a lie. One look at that little girl's face and he knew, with a certainty that terrified him. But knowing and accepting were two different things. There's been some mistake, he heard himself say. His voice sounded distant, hollow, like it belonged to someone else. I don't know what this is. A mistake. Victor Van stepped forward, his face purple with rage. A mistake? Some street urchin crashes my daughter's wedding, calls you daddy, and you call it a mistake. Father, please, Cordelia started. No. Victor's voice boomed across the terrace. I want answers. Now. Security. Two guards moved toward Marlowe and Louise. And something inside Thaddeus, something primal, something he couldn't name, lurched. Wait. The word left his lips before he could stop it. Don't touch them. Everyone froze. Finn stepped closer to Thaddeus, his voice low and urgent. Thad, what the hell is going on? Do you know this kid? I don't know. Thaddeus's hands were shaking. He shoved them into his pockets to hide it. I need a minute. A minute? Cordelia laughed, a brittle, breaking sound. We're in the middle of our wedding vows, Thaddeus. You don't get a minute. She was right. He knew she was right. The rational part of his brain screamed at him to fix this, to smooth it over, to find some explanation that would make everyone sit back down and pretend this never happened. But he couldn't stop looking at the girl. At her wild curls, Briar's curls. At her small, defiant chin, lifted the same way Briar used to lift hers when she was scared but refused to show it. At the photograph clutched in her white-knuckled grip. Sir? The coordinator approached cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman with the child. She says the girl's mother recently passed away. She says. She hesitated. She says you're the father. The word hit him like a physical blow. Father. That's impossible, he said. But even as he spoke, the math was already running in his head. 8 years since Briar left. The girl looked about 7. Which meant Briar had been pregnant when she disappeared. Which meant she'd been carrying his child and never told him. Which meant he had a daughter. No. This is absurd, Cordelia spat. It's obviously some kind of scam. Some gold digger looking for a payday. She turned to the guests, forcing a smile. Everyone please, let's not allow this interruption to ruin our beautiful day. Security will handle it, and we'll continue with the ceremony. Cordelia, Thaddeus started. No, Thaddeus. Whatever this is, it can wait. We have guests. We have a marriage to complete. We have. I'm not lying. The small voice cut through Cordelia's tirade like a blade. Marlowe had stepped forward, shrugging off Louise's protective hand. Her eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. I'm not lying, she repeated louder this time. My mama's name was Briar. She showed me pictures of you. She told me stories about you. She said you used to paint together, even though you were bad at it. She said you made her laugh. She said, her voice cracked. She said you would have loved me if you knew about me. The words hung in the salt-tinged air, fragile as spun glass. Thaddeus felt something inside him splinter. The walls he'd built, brick by brick, year by year, began to crumble. Briar told her about me. Briar kept me alive in her stories. Briar is dead. The realization crashed over him like the waves against the cliffs below. Briar was dead. The woman he'd loved, the woman he'd never stopped loving, no matter how hard he tried, was gone. And she'd left behind a child. Their child. Thaddeus. Cordelia's voice was ice. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't have some secret affair, some hidden past you never bothered to mention. It wasn't an affair, he said quietly. It was before you. Before any of this. Then why is this the first I'm hearing of it? Because I didn't know. His voice broke on the last word. I didn't know she existed. Cordelia stared at him, her perfect makeup beginning to crack along with her composure. And the mother? This. Briar? She left me. 8 years ago. I never knew why. He finally tore his gaze from Marlowe and met Cordelia's eyes. I swear to you, I didn't know. For a long moment, Cordelia said nothing. Her chest rose and fell with controlled breaths, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. Then she laughed. Cold. Hollow. Terrible. Well, she said, loud enough for every guest to hear. This is quite the wedding gift, isn't it? A secret love child. How delightfully scandalous. She turned to face the crowd, her smile sharp as a knife's edge. Don't worry, everyone. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. There always is with men like Thaddeus. They bury their secrets so deep they actually believe they've disappeared. She looked back at him, and for the first time, he saw real pain beneath her polished surface. But secrets don't disappear, do they, darling? They just wait. She lifted her chin, smoothed her gown, and walked, slowly, deliberately, back down the aisle. Cordelia, wait. Don't. She didn't turn around. Don't you dare follow me. She disappeared into the manor, leaving Thaddeus standing alone at an altar that suddenly felt like a gallows. And at the end of the aisle, Marlowe began to cry. The library of Greystone Manor smelled of old leather and forgotten stories. Thaddeus stood by the window, staring at nothing, while the chaos of 200 confused guests unfolded somewhere beyond the heavy oak doors. He could hear Victor Van's muffled shouting, Cordelia's mother wailing about the scandal, the frantic whispers of the wedding coordinator trying to salvage the unsalvageable. He didn't care about any of it. All he could think about was the photograph. Finn had ushered everyone into the library, Thaddeus, Marlowe, Louise, before the situation could spiral further. You need privacy, he'd said. Figure this out before Victor calls his lawyers. Or worse, the press. Now they were here. The three of them. Strangers bound by blood and secrets. Marlowe sat on a velvet settee, her small legs dangling above the floor. She'd stopped crying, but her cheeks were still streaked with tears, her wild curls falling across her face like a curtain she could hide behind. Louise sat beside her, one protective arm wrapped around the child's shoulders. Her eyes hadn't left Thaddeus since they'd entered the room. The silence was suffocating. You should sit down, Louise finally said. Her voice was calm but firm, the voice of a woman who had weathered too many storms to be intimidated by one more. We have a lot to discuss. I'll stand. Suit yourself. She paused. But running away from this won't make it disappear. I think you've figured that out by now. Thaddeus turned from the window, his jaw tight. Who are you? My name is Louise. I was Briar's best friend. Her only family, really, besides Marlowe. She stroked the girl's hair gently. When Briar got sick, she asked me to take care of her daughter. And to find you. Sick? The word caught in his throat. What do you mean, sick? Louise's eyes softened with something that looked like pity. She had cancer, Mr. Mercer. Diagnosed 3 years ago. She fought as long as she could, but she didn't finish. She didn't have to. Thaddeus felt the floor shift beneath him. He reached for the back of a chair, steadying himself against a grief he had no right to feel. Briar had cancer. Briar fought for 3 years. Briar died alone. When? His voice was barely a whisper. 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. He'd been choosing wedding invitations 6 weeks ago, debating between ivory and cream cardstock, while the only woman he'd ever truly loved took her last breath in some hospital he didn't even know existed. Why didn't she tell me? The question ripped out of him, raw and ragged. About any of it, the cancer, the child. Why didn't she tell me? Because she was scared. Louise's voice hardened slightly. Because when she found out she was pregnant, she also found out about the other thing. Thaddeus frowned. What other thing? The merger. The one your investors were pushing 8 years ago. The one that required you to marry Victor Van's daughter to seal the deal. Louise's gaze was unflinching. Briar saw the papers on your desk. She saw the contracts. She saw your signature on documents that promised you to another woman. The blood drained from Thaddeus's face. That's not. I never signed those. I refused the deal. I told them I wouldn't. But she didn't know that, did she? Louise cut in. All she saw was evidence that the man she loved had already promised himself to someone else. So she made a choice. A terrible, heartbreaking choice. She walked away before you could walk away from her. Thaddeus's legs gave out. He sank into the chair, his head falling into his hands. All these years. All this time. He'd thought Briar left because she didn't love him enough to stay. Because he wasn't enough. Because some fundamental part of him was unworthy of being chosen. But she'd left because she thought he had already chosen someone else. I would have chosen her. His voice cracked. I would have chosen her over everything. I know, Louise said quietly. She knew too, eventually. But by then years had passed. You'd become someone else, a billionaire, a public figure, a man surrounded by people who wanted things from him. She didn't think she had the right to disrupt your life. She had every right. He looked up, his eyes blazing with 8 years of suppressed anguish. She had every right. A small voice broke through the tension. Are you mad at my mama? Thaddeus turned. Marlowe was watching him, her storm-gray eyes searching his face for something. Anger, maybe, or rejection. The two things she feared most. He slid off the chair and knelt on the floor in front of her. This close, he could see every detail, the spray of freckles across her nose, just like Briar's. The stubborn set of her jaw. The way her bottom lip trembled even as she tried to look brave. His daughter. No, he said softly. I'm not mad at your mama. Then why do you look so sad? The question pierced him straight through the heart. Because. He struggled to find words simple enough for a child, true enough for himself. Because I miss so much. Because I didn't get to know her at the end. And because I didn't get to know you at the beginning. Marlowe considered this with the gravity of someone far older than 7. Mama said you would have read me bedtime stories, she offered. She said you did funny voices. Despite everything, the ruined wedding, the watching guests, the uncertain future, Thaddeus felt something flicker in his chest. Something warm. Something dangerously close to hope. I do, he admitted. I'm particularly good at dragons. For the first time since she'd arrived at Greystone Manor, Marlowe smiled. It was small, hesitant, barely there at all. But it was real. And in that moment, Thaddeus Mercer understood that his entire life was about to change. He just didn't know yet if he was brave enough to let it. Louise reached into her worn canvas bag and pulled out a bundle of envelopes, tied together with a faded blue ribbon. She wanted you to have these, she said, holding them out to Thaddeus. She wrote them over the years. One every few months. Sometimes more when things got hard. Thaddeus stared at the bundle like it might burn him. There had to be at least 30 envelopes, maybe more. Each one addressed to him in Briar's unmistakable handwriting. Looping, chaotic, beautiful. Just like her. She never sent them, Louise continued. She'd write them, seal them, address them, and then she'd lose her nerve. She kept saying she'd mail them tomorrow. Tomorrow turned into next week. Next week turned into next year. Her voice dropped. Eventually, there was no more time left. With trembling hands, Thaddeus took the bundle. The paper was soft, worn from years of being held, read, and held again. Briar must have opened and reread them herself, dozens of times, before sealing them back up. I'll give you some privacy, Louise said, rising from the settee. She looked down at Marlowe. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go find something to eat. You haven't had anything since this morning. Marlowe hesitated, looking between Louise and Thaddeus. Will you still be here when I get back? The question was so simple, so loaded with fear. I'll be here, Thaddeus promised. I'm not going anywhere. Something in Marlowe's expression shifted. A tiny crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. She nodded once, then took Louise's hand and let herself be led from the room. The door clicked shut behind them, and Thaddeus was alone with Briar's ghost. He sat in the leather armchair by the window, the bundle of letters resting in his lap like a grenade. His fingers fumbled with the blue ribbon, Briar's favorite color, he remembered. She used to wear it in her hair. The first envelope was dated 8 years ago. Just weeks after she'd vanished. He slid his finger under the seal and began to read. My dearest Thaddeus, I'm writing this from a motel room in Nevada. The walls are thin, the sheets smell like bleach, and I've been crying for 3 days straight. I know you must hate me. I hate me too. I saw the papers on your desk. The merger contract. The marriage clause. I saw Cordelia Van's name next to yours, and I understood, finally, what I am to you. A distraction. A detour. Something to enjoy before you settle into the life you were always meant to have. I'm not angry. I don't have the right to be. You never promised me forever. I hoped. Stupid, stupid hope. I found out something else that day. Something that changes everything. I wanted to tell you, God, I wanted to tell you so badly. But how could I? How could I trap you with a child when you're about to marry someone else? How could I make you choose between your future and a baby you never asked for? So I'm choosing for you. I'm setting you free. Maybe one day, when you're happy and successful and everything you were meant to be, I'll find the courage to tell you. Maybe one day, our daughter will know her father. But not today. Today, I'm just trying to survive. I love you. I'll always love you. That's the tragedy of it all. Briar. Thaddeus couldn't breathe. The letter shook in his hands as the truth sank in, heavy as stone. She'd seen the contracts, the ones he'd ultimately rejected, the ones he'd thrown in his investors' faces before telling them he'd rather burn his company to the ground than marry for business. But she hadn't known that. She'd seen them and assumed the worst. And she'd been pregnant. He reached for the next letter. And the next. And the next. Year 2. Marlowe took her first steps today. I wish you could have seen it. She wobbled like a tiny drunk, crashed into the coffee table, and then laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. She has your laugh, Thad. I didn't think that was possible, but she does. I almost called you. I had your number pulled up on my phone. My thumb was hovering over the green button. Then I saw a headline about your company's latest acquisition. You looked so polished in the photo. So untouchable. And I realized you've moved on. You've become the man you were always supposed to be. Who am I to interrupt that? Just a ghost. Haunting the edges of a life I was never meant to be part of. Year 4. Marlowe asked about you today. She found an old photograph and wanted to know who the man with Mama was. I told her you were her father. I told her you were kind and funny and brilliant. I told her you would have loved her if things had been different. She asked why things couldn't be different now. I didn't have an answer. Year 6. The doctors say I have cancer. Stage 3. They say if I'm lucky, I have a few years left. If I'm not, less. I thought about calling you. I've thought about calling you every single day for 6 years. But now there's a new fear. What if you've forgotten me? What if I call and you don't even remember my voice? What if Marlowe reaches out to you and you turn her away? I couldn't bear it. For myself, I could bear it. But not for her. She's the best thing I've ever done, Thad. The only thing that matters. And I'm so scared of what happens to her when I'm gone. I made Louise promise to find you. To bring Marlowe to you. To give you these letters so you'd understand. I just hope, when the time comes, you'll let yourself love her. I just hope you won't hate me for keeping her from you. Please don't hate me. Briar. The last letter was dated 3 days before she died. Thaddeus. I'm running out of time. I can feel it. My body is giving up, even though my heart keeps fighting. Louise will bring Marlowe to you soon. I've told her everything, about the contracts I saw, about why I left, about every stupid, scared decision I made. She'll explain it better than I can. But there's one thing I need you to know. One thing I need to say before I go. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single second of a single day. You were my greatest adventure, Thaddeus Mercer. You were my almost forever. Take care of our daughter. She's brave and stubborn and so scared of being unwanted. Show her that she matters. Show her that love isn't something you have to earn. And if you can find it in your heart, forgive me. Yours always and forever, Briar. Thaddeus pressed the letter to his chest and broke. He wept like he hadn't wept since his mother's funeral. Great, heaving sobs that tore through him, releasing 8 years of grief, confusion, and unspoken love. Briar had loved him. Briar had always loved him. And she died thinking she wasn't worthy of disrupting his life. Let me pause here and ask you something. Have you ever lost someone before you got the chance to tell them how you really felt? That moment when you realize all the words you should have said, but didn't? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if this story is hitting you in the heart, if you're feeling every word of Thaddeus's grief and Briar's sacrifice, don't just feel it. Show it. Hit that subscribe button, tap the like, and share this with someone who needs a good cry today. Because stories like this, they only exist because of people like you. He was still holding the letter when the door creaked open. Marlowe stood in the doorway, a half-eaten cookie in her hand, her gray eyes wide with worry. "Are you okay?" she whispered. Thaddeus wiped his face, but he didn't hide his tears. Not from her. Not anymore. "Come here," he said, his voice rough and raw. She crossed the room slowly, uncertainly, and stopped in front of him. "Your mother," he said, taking her small hand in his, "was the bravest person I've ever known. And she loved you more than anything in this world." Marlowe's bottom lip trembled. "She loved you too. She told me every day." "I know." He pulled her into his arms, gently, carefully, like she might shatter. "I know she did." And for the first time in 8 years, Thaddeus Mercer held his daughter and let himself feel everything. The sun had begun its descent toward the Pacific, painting Greystone Manor in shades of amber and rose. The wedding guests had long since departed, some scandalized, some sympathetic, all hungry for gossip that would fuel dinner conversations for months to come. Thaddeus didn't care. He sat cross-legged on the library floor, his tuxedo jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up, while Marlowe built a castle out of leather-bound first editions. "This one is the tower where the dragon sleeps," she announced, carefully balancing a copy of War and Peace on top of Pride and Prejudice. "And this one," she added a slim volume of poetry, "is where the princess lives." "Seems like a fire hazard," Thaddeus observed. Dragon and princess in the same building. Marlowe looked at him with the patient expression of someone explaining the obvious to a particularly slow adult. "The dragon protects the princess. He only breathes fire on the bad guys." "Ah, my mistake." She smiled, still small, still fragile, but growing steadier each moment they spent together. Louise sat in the corner, quietly observing. She'd offered to take Marlowe to a hotel for the night, to give Thaddeus space to process everything. But he'd refused. "She stays," he'd said. "I've missed 7 years. I'm not missing another minute." Now, 3 hours later, he was learning the shape of his daughter's world. Her favorite color, purple like twilight. Her least favorite food, green beans, because they're squishy. The name of her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Whiskers, though he was missing an ear and had no whiskers at all. And her dreams. "Mama said you lived in a building that touched the clouds," Marlowe said, abandoning her book castle to sit beside him. "Is that true?" "Sort of. I have an office on the 42nd floor." Her eyes went wide. "Can you see the whole world from up there?" "Just the city. But on clear days, you can see the bay and the bridges and all the boats." "I've never been on a boat." Her voice went soft, wistful. "Mama said maybe one day we could go sailing. But then she got sick, and we couldn't go anymore." The grief in her words was so matter-of-fact, so practiced. This child had learned too young how to carry loss. "Would you like to?" Thaddeus asked. "Go sailing, I mean." "With me." Marlowe turned to look at him, searching his face for the lie, the empty promise. She'd been disappointed before. He could see it in the cautious hope flickering in her eyes. Really. I have a sailboat. It's been gathering dust because I never have time to use it. But if you'd like, we could take it out. Maybe this weekend, if Louise says it's okay." Louise's voice drifted from the corner, warm with approval. "I think that would be lovely." Marlowe's entire face transformed. For the first time since she'd walked into the wedding, she looked like what she was. A 7-year-old girl who'd just been promised an adventure. "Can Mr. Whiskers come too?" "Mr. Whiskers gets the captain's chair." She laughed. A real laugh, bright and unguarded. And Thaddeus felt something shift in his chest. A door he'd locked 8 years ago creaking open, letting light flood into rooms he'd forgotten existed. An hour later, after Louise had gently suggested that Marlowe needed rest, Thaddeus found himself in one of Greystone's guest suites, sitting on the edge of a 4-poster bed while his daughter burrowed under blankets that probably cost more than some people's monthly rent. "Mama always read me a story before bed," Marlowe said, clutching Mr. Whiskers to her chest. "Do you know any stories?" Thaddeus's mind went blank. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, given keynote speeches to thousands, but faced with a 7-year-old's simple request, he faltered. "I'm not sure I know any good ones," he admitted. "That's okay. You can make one up. Mama always did." Of course she did. Briar had been brilliant at spinning tales out of thin air. Stories about brave girls and unlikely heroes, about magic hiding in ordinary places, about love that conquered impossible odds. He took a breath. All right. Once upon a time, there was a dragon who lived in a tower at the edge of the world. Marlowe's eyes lit up. Was he scary? Everyone thought he was scary. He was enormous and covered in scales and breathed fire when he was angry. But the truth was he was just lonely. He'd been alone for so long. He'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone care about him. That's sad, Marlowe whispered. It was. Until one day, a little girl climbed all the way up his tower. She wasn't afraid of him, even though everyone told her she should be. She just looked at him with these big, brave eyes and asked, "Why are you sitting in here all alone?" What did the dragon say? He said, "Because I'm a monster. Monsters don't deserve friends." Marlowe frowned. That's not true. That's what the little girl said too. She told the dragon that being big and scary on the outside doesn't make you a monster. It's what's inside that matters. And she could see that inside, the dragon was just scared. Scared of what? Thaddeus's voice softened. Of letting people close enough to hurt him. Of hoping for something good and losing it. Of being left behind. The room fell quiet. Marlowe studied him with those storm-gray eyes, too knowing, too perceptive for someone so young. Is this story about you? She asked. The question pierced straight through him. He could deflect. Make a joke. Retreat behind the walls he'd perfected over the years. But something about the way she looked at him, the same way Briar used to look at him, like she could see every hidden corner of his soul, made honesty the only option. Maybe a little, he admitted. Are you scared of me? No. The word came out fierce, certain. No, Marlowe. I'm not scared of you. I'm scared of failing you. Of not being the father you deserve. She considered this with the gravity she applied to everything important. Mama said everybody's scared sometimes, she finally said. She said being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the thing anyway. God, Briar. Even in death, she was still teaching him how to live. Your mama was very wise. I know. Marlowe yawned, her eyelids drooping. She said you were wise too. Just stubborn. Despite everything, the chaos, the heartbreak, the uncertainty, Thaddeus laughed. She wasn't wrong. So what happened? Marlowe murmured, already halfway to sleep. With the dragon and the little girl? They became friends. The best of friends. And the dragon learned that letting someone into your tower doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave. I like that ending, she whispered. Me too. Her breathing evened out, her small body relaxing into sleep. Thaddeus sat there for a long moment, watching her. Memorizing the curve of her cheek, the wild tangle of her curls, the way her fingers clutched Mr. Whiskers even in dreams. My daughter. The thought still felt surreal. Still felt impossible. But it was real. She was real. And for the first time in 8 years, Thaddeus felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. He found Louise in the hallway waiting. She asleep? She asked. Out cold. He closed the door quietly behind him. Thank you. For bringing her. For keeping your promise to Briar. For everything. Louise's expression softened. She's a special kid. Briar did an incredible job raising her, even when things were impossible. I should have been there. The words tasted like ash. I should have known. Should have looked for her harder. Should have. Should have read Briar's mind? Louise cut him off gently. Mr. Mercer, Thaddeus, you can't punish yourself for not knowing things she worked very hard to hide from you. She made her choices. Some of them were wrong. Some were born from fear and misunderstanding. But they were hers. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, Louise agreed. It doesn't. But what you do now, that matters more than what happened then. He nodded slowly, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Not a burden, an honor. I want to be her father, he said. Not just in name. I want to be there. I want to. He stopped, overwhelmed by the enormity of it all. Louise smiled. Then be there. That's all she needs. Someone who shows up. Later that night, Thaddeus stood alone on the terrace where he was supposed to have been married. The chairs were gone. The flowers wilted. The altar dismantled. But the ocean still roared below, relentless and eternal. His phone buzzed. A text from Finn. Wedding's off, I take it? Thaddeus typed back. Postponed. Maybe cancelled. Don't know yet. 3 dots appeared then. You okay? He looked back through the glass doors, toward the guest suite where his daughter slept. I have a kid, Finn. Holy shit. Yeah. You going to be okay? Thaddeus thought about Briar's letters. About Marlowe's brave gray eyes. About the sailboat gathering dust and the stories yet to be told. I think so. For the first time in a long time. I think so. He pocketed his phone and walked back inside. Tomorrow, there would be difficult conversations. Cordelia would demand answers. Victor would threaten lawsuits. The press would have a field day. But tonight, he had a daughter who needed him. And that was more than enough. Morning came too soon. Thaddeus woke to the sound of expensive heels clicking across marble. A sound he'd learned to recognize over the past 6 months of wedding planning. Cordelia was back. He found her in the grand foyer, flanked by her father and 2 men in sharp suits who had lawyer written all over them. She'd changed out of her wedding gown into a charcoal dress that meant business. "We need to talk," she said. No greeting. No warmth. "Cordelia, not here." She glanced toward the stairs, where Marlowe might overhear. The study. Now. The study felt like a courtroom. Victor Van sat behind the mahogany desk as if he owned it. Technically, the estate belonged to the Van family trust. Cordelia took the chair beside him. The lawyers stood like sentries by the door. Thaddeus remained standing. "Yesterday was humiliating," Cordelia began, her voice cold and controlled. 200 guests. International press. My family's reputation dragged through the mud because you couldn't keep your past buried. "I didn't know about her," Thaddeus said quietly. "I've told you that. And I'm supposed to believe that? That some woman disappeared with your child and you just never looked for her?" "I looked. For months. She didn't want to be found." Victor leaned forward. "Convenient story. Unfortunately, it doesn't change our situation. The merger between Mercer Tech and Van Hospitality was contingent on this marriage. Without it, the deal collapses. Then it collapses." The words fell like stones into still water. Cordelia's eyes flashed. "Excuse me? I said it collapses. I'm not going to pretend yesterday didn't happen. I have a daughter, Cordelia. A daughter who just lost her mother. A daughter who needs me. A daughter you've known for less than 24 hours, Cordelia shot back. "Don't romanticize this, Thaddeus. You don't know that child. You don't know what she needs. For all you know, this is some elaborate scam. She has my eyes." His voice hardened. "She has Briar's handwriting in letters that span 7 years. She has memories and photographs and DNA I'd be happy to test. She's mine, Cordelia. And I'm not walking away from her." One of the lawyers stepped forward. "Mr. Mercer, you should be aware that custody cases involving illegitimate children and significant wealth are complicated. Especially when the child has been in another guardian's care. Louise isn't trying to keep her from me. Perhaps not. But the court will want to determine what's in the child's best interest. A stable home. A present parent. Not a workaholic billionaire who jets around the world closing deals." The words hit their mark. Thaddeus's jaw tightened. Cordelia softened her tone, a negotiation tactic he recognized. "I'm not asking you to abandon her, Thad. I'm asking you to be realistic. We can still make this work. We postpone the wedding a few months. You establish paternity, set up a trust fund, arrange for the child's care, boarding school, nannies, whatever she needs. You can be in her life without appending yours." "Appending my life?" He stared at her. "She is my life now. You've known her for 1 day. And I've missed 7 years. His voice cracked. 7 years of bedtime stories and first steps and scraped knees. 7 years I'll never get back because her mother thought I'd chosen a merger over love. He looked directly at Cordelia. She was wrong then. I'm not going to prove her right now. Cordelia stood, her composure finally fracturing. So that's it? You're choosing her over me? Over everything we built together. We didn't build anything, Cordelia. We negotiated a contract. The truth hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. I loved you, Cordelia whispered, and for the first time, he heard real pain beneath the polish. No, Thaddeus said gently. You loved the idea of what we could be together. The power couple. The empire. But you never loved me. And I never loved you. We both know it. Tears gathered in Cordelia's eyes, but she blinked them back. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But she's my mistake to make. Victor stood abruptly. This isn't over, Mercer. That child complicates everything, inheritance, liability, public image. My legal team will be in touch regarding the broken contract and the reputational damage to my daughter. Do what you need to do, Thaddeus said evenly. But Marlowe stays with me. They left in a storm of threats and slammed doors. Thaddeus stood alone in the study, his heart hammering, his hands shaking with adrenaline. He'd just blown up his life. Walked away from a multi-billion-dollar merger. Ended his engagement. Made powerful enemies. For a child he barely knew. The rational part of his brain screamed that he was insane. That he should have negotiated, compromised, found a middle ground that preserved his empire while acknowledging his daughter. But the other part, the part that remembered Briar's letters, Marlowe's brave gray eyes, the way she'd whispered "Daddy" like a prayer. That part knew he'd made the only choice he could live with. He found Marlowe in the library with Louise, drawing pictures with expensive fountain pens she'd discovered in a desk drawer. She looked up when he entered, her expression cautious. "I heard yelling. I'm sorry about that. Was it about me?" The question pierced him. She was 7 years old and already blaming herself for adult chaos. "It was about choices," he said, kneeling beside her. "And I need you to know something, Marlowe. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone says or does, you are not a mistake. You are not a problem. You are a gift I didn't know I'd been given." Her bottom lip trembled. "The pretty lady doesn't want me here. The pretty lady doesn't get to decide. I do. And I want you here. But what if you change your mind?" The fear in her voice was heartbreaking. "What if you get tired of me like... She didn't finish, but he understood. Like everyone else who left. He took her small hands in his. "I'm not going anywhere. And neither are you. We're going to figure this out together, okay? It won't be perfect. I don't know how to be a dad yet, and you're still learning how to trust me. But we'll learn together. Promise?" The word was so small. So desperate. "I promise." She studied his face for a long moment, searching for the lie. When she found none, she threw her arms around his neck and held on like he was the only solid thing in a crumbling world. And maybe for her he was. Louise watched from across the room, tears streaming silently down her face. Outside, the Pacific roared against the cliffs. And inside Greystone Manor, a billionaire and his daughter began the slow, fragile work of becoming a family. But storms were gathering. Legal threats. Media scrutiny. A custody battle that could tear them apart before they'd even begun. The shatter point had passed. Now came the reckoning. 3 weeks passed like a slow-motion avalanche. The media had a field day. "Billionaire's secret love child ruins wedding," screamed the headlines. Paparazzi camped outside Thaddeus's San Francisco penthouse. Stock prices for Mercer Tech fluctuated wildly as investors questioned his judgment. Victor Van made good on his threats. The lawyers came with papers, breach of contract, reputational damage, demands for compensation in the tens of millions. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst came on a Thursday morning when a social worker appeared at Thaddeus's door with a court summons. Victor had filed for an emergency custody evaluation, claiming Thaddeus was an unfit parent, a virtual stranger trying to play father to a traumatized child for publicity purposes. "You've known the child for less than a month," the social worker said gently, reviewing her notes in Thaddeus's living room while Marlowe colored at the kitchen table, oblivious. "You have no parenting experience. You work 80-hour weeks. Your home isn't child-proofed. And according to the filing, you have no legal documentation proving paternity." "I'll take a DNA test today," Thaddeus said. "Right now. That's a start. But Mr. Mercer, the court's primary concern is stability. What can you offer this child that a traditional foster placement or adoption can't?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "I can offer her a father," Thaddeus said quietly. "Her father." The social worker's expression softened, but her pen kept moving across the evaluation form. "The hearing is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. I'd suggest you prepare thoroughly. They're going to question everything: your lifestyle, your commitment, your ability to put her needs first." After she left, Thaddeus sat at the kitchen table across from Marlowe. She was drawing a picture of a boat. Their sailing trip had been postponed 3 times because of lawyers and court dates. "Are they going to take me away?" she asked without looking up. His heart stopped. "You heard. I always hear." She finally met his eyes. Grown-ups think kids don't understand, but we do. That lady thinks you don't know how to take care of me. She doesn't know me yet. That's what the hearing is for, so I can show them. What if they don't believe you? Her voice was so small. What if they send me to live with strangers? Thaddeus reached across the table and took her hand. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. She was right. He didn't. But he was going to fight like hell to make sure it didn't. Finn found him that night in his home office, surrounded by parenting books, court documents, and half-empty coffee cups. You look like death, Finn observed, dropping into a chair. Feel like it too. The board called an emergency meeting. They want you to settle with Victor, do damage control, get back to business as usual. And what did you tell them? I told them to go to hell. Finn grinned. I'm your COO. I can handle operations while you handle this. But Thad, they're not wrong about the optics. If you lose this custody case, I'm not going to lose. You can't know that. Thaddeus slammed his hand on the desk, making the coffee cups rattle. I can't lose her, Finn. I just found her. I can't. I can't be the reason she ends up in the system, shuffled between strangers, thinking her own father didn't want her enough to fight. Then what are you going to do? The question echoed in the silence. What could he do? Restructure his entire life? Step back from the company he'd built from nothing? Prove to a court that he could be present, stable, committed. All the things he'd never had to be before? Whatever it takes, Thaddeus said finally. I'll do whatever it takes. The next morning, he made 3 phone calls. The first was to his board of directors. I'm stepping down as CEO. Effective immediately. Finn will take over day-to-day operations. I'll remain as chairman, but my working hours are cut to 30 per week maximum. The board erupted. Threatened. Demanded. He hung up. The second call was to his real estate agent. The penthouse is too small. I need a house. Something with a yard. Good schools nearby. A place that feels like a home, not a showroom. The third call was to Louise. I need your help, he admitted. I don't know how to braid hair or pack school lunches, or any of the 1,000 things Briar knew how to do. I need you to teach me. Louise's voice was warm. I thought you'd never ask. 2 weeks later, the courtroom felt like a gladiatorial arena. Thaddeus sat at the defendant's table, his lawyer beside him. Across the aisle, Victor Van's legal team looked predatory and confident. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Hendricks, reviewed the case files with an expression that gave nothing away. This is a preliminary hearing to determine temporary custody arrangements for the minor child, Marlowe Montgomery, she began. Mr. Mercer, you're petitioning for full custody. Mr. Van, you filed concerns about Mr. Mercer's fitness as a parent. Let's hear arguments. Victor's lead attorney stood. Your Honor, Thaddeus Mercer is a stranger to this child. He's known her for 1 month. He has no parenting experience, no stable home environment suitable for a child, and a documented history of 80-hour work weeks. He's using this child as a publicity stunt to rehabilitate his image after a scandalous wedding disruption. That's a lie, Thaddeus growled. His lawyer put a warning hand on his arm. Judge Hendricks raised an eyebrow. You'll have your chance to speak, Mr. Mercer. Continue, counsel. We're not seeking to remove the child from Mr. Mercer's life entirely. We're simply asking the court to recognize that the best interest of the child requires a stable, experienced guardian. We have a family willing to foster Marlowe while Mr. Mercer establishes a genuine relationship. No. The word came from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. Marlowe stood in the gallery beside Louise, her small body trembling but her voice steady. Marlowe, Louise started. No, Marlowe repeated louder this time. I don't want another family. I want my dad. Judge Hendricks leaned forward. Young lady, this isn't. Please. Marlowe's eyes filled with tears. He promised he wouldn't leave. He promised we'd learn together. And he's trying so hard. He bought me a house with a purple bedroom. He learned how to make pancakes, even though he burned them the first 6 times. He reads me stories every night and does the dragon voice. Her voice broke. My mama's gone. I can't get her back. But he's here. And he's trying. Please don't take him away from me too. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Hendricks looked at Thaddeus. Mr. Mercer, stand up. He did. Have you completed the paternity test? Yes, Your Honor. Results confirm I'm Marlowe's biological father. And you've reduced your work hours? To 30 per week. My COO has taken over operations. You've acquired suitable housing. A 4-bedroom house in Pacific Heights. Near excellent schools. With a yard. Judge Hendricks made a note. Then she looked directly at Marlowe. Sweetheart, do you feel safe with Mr. Mercer? Yes. Do you want to live with him? Yes. No hesitation. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then she closed the file. Temporary custody is granted to Thaddeus Mercer, pending a full evaluation in 6 months. We'll reconvene then to determine permanent arrangements. She fixed Thaddeus with a stern look. Don't make me regret this, Mr. Mercer. I won't, Your Honor. I promise. Outside the courthouse, Thaddeus knelt down and pulled Marlowe into his arms. You were so brave in there, he whispered. I was scared. Being brave means doing it anyway. Someone very wise taught me that. She smiled through her tears. Mama? And you? Louise joined them, her own eyes wet. Looks like you two are official. Thaddeus stood, keeping Marlowe's hand firmly in his. Looks like we are. For the first time in 8 years, the future didn't feel like a contract to negotiate. It felt like a promise worth keeping. 6 months later, the sailboat cut through the San Francisco Bay like a white bird skimming the surface of memory. The sky was impossibly blue, the kind of California morning that felt stolen from a dream. Thaddeus adjusted the mainsail while Marlowe sat at the helm, her hands gripping the wheel with fierce concentration. She'd grown in the past 6 months, taller, steadier, more certain of her place in the world. Am I doing it right? She called over the wind. Perfect, Thaddeus called back. Keep her steady. Feel the wind. Mr. Whiskers sat secured in the captain's chair, his one remaining ear fluttering in the breeze. Louise had stayed back at the house. Their house now, the 4-bedroom in Pacific Heights that actually felt like a home. She was preparing for the celebration dinner that evening, the one marking the end of the 6-month evaluation period. The final custody hearing had been last week. Judge Hendricks had reviewed the social worker's reports, glowing accounts of Thaddeus's transformation. The bedtime routines, the parent-teacher conferences, the soccer practices and doctor's appointments and birthday party he'd thrown with slightly too much enthusiasm and considerably too much cake. Permanent custody granted to Thaddeus Mercer, the judge had declared, with commendation for exceptional commitment to the child's well-being. Marlowe had cried. So had Thaddeus. Even the social worker had gotten misty-eyed. Now, out on the water with his daughter at the helm, Thaddeus felt something he'd spent most of his adult life convinced he didn't deserve. Peace. Can we go faster? Marlowe asked, her eyes sparkling with Briar's wild joy. You sure you can handle it? I'm sure. He adjusted the sails, and the boat surged forward. Marlowe shrieked with delight, her laughter carried away by the wind. And Thaddeus laughed too, freely, unguardedly, the way he used to laugh before loss taught him to hide. They anchored near Alcatraz and ate sandwiches Louise had packed. Marlowe dangled her feet over the side of the boat, watching the seagulls circle overhead. Do you think Mama can see us? She asked suddenly. The question caught Thaddeus mid-bite. He set down his sandwich and moved to sit beside her. I think so, he said carefully. I think wherever she is, she knows you're happy. And loved. And exactly where you're supposed to be. Marlowe was quiet for a moment. I miss her. I know, sweetheart. I miss her too. But I'm glad I found you. She looked up at him with those storm-gray eyes. Even though it was scary. Even though I thought you might not want me. I'm glad I was brave enough to come find you. Thaddeus's throat tightened. I'm glad too. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Marlowe. You know that, right? She nodded solemnly. Then, with the lightning-quick mood shift of a child, she brightened. Can I steer on the way back? Absolutely. And can we get ice cream after? We're having a big dinner tonight. Please. Just a small one. He pretended to consider it, then grinned. Okay. But don't tell Louise. Deal. She stuck out her pinky. They shook on it, the most sacred of contracts. That evening, the house on Pacific Heights glowed with warmth. Louise had outdone herself. A feast spread across the dining table, candles flickering, flowers from the garden Marlowe had helped plant arranged in mason jars. Finn arrived with champagne and sparkling cider. For the guest of honor, he said, handing Marlowe the cider with a formal bow. She giggled and curtsied back. They sat around the table, this makeshift family that had formed from grief and hope, and raised their glasses. To new beginnings, Finn toasted. To keeping promises, Louise added, her eyes shining. To dragons who learn to be brave, Marlowe said, making Thaddeus's heart clench with pride. To love, Thaddeus said quietly. The kind that shows up, the kind that stays. They clinked glasses. And as they ate and laughed and told stories, Thaddeus looked around the table and realized something profound. For years, he'd built an empire, accumulated wealth, climbed every ladder and conquered every goal. But this messy, imperfect, beautiful life with a daughter who left her shoes everywhere and asked 1,000 questions and needed him in ways that terrified and completed him. This was the success that mattered. Later, after Finn and Louise had gone home, Thaddeus tucked Marlowe into bed, her bed in her purple bedroom in their house. Big day tomorrow, he said, smoothing her wild curls. First day back at school after break. I'm nervous, she admitted. What if the other kids ask about everything? About the wedding and the news and why I live with you now? Then you tell them the truth. That you're Marlowe Mercer, he paused. They'd made it official last month. The adoption papers that gave her his name, legally and forever. And your family might look different than theirs, but it's yours. And it's real. And it's enough. She considered this. Marlowe Mercer. I still like how it sounds. Me too. Do you think you'll ever get married for Real? To someone who actually loves you? The question surprised him. I don't know. Maybe someday. Would that be okay with you? Only if she's nice to Mr. Whiskers. That's a reasonable requirement. She smiled sleepily. And only if she knows you're already taken on Saturdays. Saturdays are our sailing days. Forever and always, he promised. Forever and always, she echoed. Her eyes drifted shut. Within minutes, her breathing evened into the gentle rhythm of sleep. Thaddeus sat there a while longer, watching her, marveling at the mystery of how a single moment, a wedding interrupted, a child's whispered word, could change everything. He thought about Briar, about her letters, about her sacrifice and her fear and her fierce, enduring love. I hope I'm doing right by you, he thought. I hope wherever you are, you know she's okay. That we're okay. The wind chimes outside the window sang softly, and for just a moment, he could have sworn he felt something, a warmth, a presence, a sense of peace that felt like forgiveness. Like blessing. Like Briar saying goodbye. Thaddeus walked to his own room and found the bundle of letters on his nightstand. He'd read them so many times, the pages were soft as cloth. Tonight, he added something new. He pulled out a sheet of paper and began to write. Dear Briar, I don't know if you can read this, wherever you are. But I needed to write it anyway. Our daughter is asleep down the hall. She's brave and stubborn and brilliant. So much like you it takes my breath away. She has your laugh. Your wild spirit. Your capacity to love even when the world gives her every reason not to. I wish you were here. I wish I could tell you in person that I understand now why you left. I wish I could tell you that I forgive you. And that I hope you forgive me too, for not fighting harder to find you. But mostly, I wish I could tell you that you were wrong about one thing. You thought I would have seen Marlowe as a burden. A complication. Something that would ruin my carefully constructed life. But Briar, she didn't ruin my life. She saved it. She taught me what actually matters. What's worth fighting for. What love looks like when it's real and messy and willing to sacrifice everything. I'm her father now. Legally. Permanently. And I promise you, I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life making sure she knows she is wanted. Chosen. Loved beyond measure. Thank you for the gift you gave me. Thank you for being brave enough to love me once. And thank you for our daughter. I'll take care of her. I promise. Until we meet again, Thaddeus. He folded the letter, placed it with the others, and tied the blue ribbon back around the bundle. Then he turned off the light and let himself rest. Outside, the city glittered like scattered stars. And inside the house on Pacific Heights, a father and daughter dreamed of sailboats and dragon stories and tomorrows full of promise. Now, before we close this story, I want to ask you something important. What would you do if you suddenly discovered you had a child you never knew existed? Would you be brave enough to change everything for love? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if this story touched your heart, if you felt every moment of Thaddeus and Marlowe's journey, if you believe in second chances and love that transforms, don't just feel it. Share it. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this. Tap the like button to let me know this resonated with you. And share it with someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to choose love. Because here's the truth. I pour my heart into these stories for you. Every word, every emotion, every twist. And the only way I know they matter is if you tell me. So comment, subscribe, engage, be part of this community. Don't just listen and disappear. Stay, connect. Let's build something beautiful together.